Everybody ready? Then
Yes.
I don't know how it is the October 2nd meeting of the Community Preservation Committee, but we will call our meeting to order. The first order of business is to review and approve the minutes, which Melanie did send out. Are there any questions, comments, corrections?
I have a correction.
Yes.
And I know that, thank you, Melanie, for writing the minutes based on the videotape. So thank you for doing extra homework to create this. Only correction I would like to propose here is that, and item number 2 says the minutes of the September 11th, 2023 meeting were approved unanimously. I'd like to cross out unanimous and instead replace it with one abstention.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
I was not at the previous meeting, so I abstained.
I'm sorry?
I was not at the previous meeting, so I abstained from
Oh, I see.
the minutes.
Okay, I love the detail. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments, corrections? Was there a motion to approve the minutes with that one addition of one abstention?
I move that we approve the minutes of, when was it?
September 25th.
Sunday.
September 27th.
Fifth.
September 25th with the edits suggested by Mr. Molino.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes are approved. The next item is to review and sign bills. Are there any bills, Mr. McGoldrick?
None this evening.
And we will continue on. The next is also you, the RFQ for CPC support retainer.
Thank you. So this is an item we've kind of held for a little bit on the agenda. What I did is I kind of forwarded the folder again. What you see in that, we provided kind of a draft RFQ, request for qualifications, that is an example that the committee could consider in terms of pursuing a consultant services style approach. I also pulled from our previous kind of research into this position, essentially the files that are on the Coalition website showing a lot of the job descriptions that other communities use. Those tend to be more employment with the community, allocating staff time towards those positions. So that would be another approach that could be explored if that's something that the committee wanted to go in that direction. That would all obviously involve HR, and we can kind of draft something similar to that if that's the direction we want to go. But
I have a question.
yeah.
I noticed, I have to admit, I didn't read all. I think there's 16 towns there. Newton had an interesting one where they referred to the project manager that they were looking for. Now, are you thinking along those lines at all? I am of the opinion that probably the Public Works Department, the Parks Department probably are suddenly getting an influx of work because of our projects, and may be stressed. And that is, a consideration you might want to think about. I don't know if CPC money is good for that, but I'm just mentioning that particular, the Newton plan sounded very comprehensive and probably would be helpful to a lot of other departments besides just this committee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, certainly, I won't say, without anything, but, I think that most of these being hosted on the Coalition website, I think, have probably been pretty thoroughly reviewed in terms of their validity for Coalition funding. So I'd have a lot of confidence in that. Obviously, we would verify, before posting out anything. But I think that for discussion for tonight, I think that would be really helpful, is to look at what the scope of administrative support we'd like to see to help kind of further flesh out that scope of work, whether it's, that project management kind of work, as you said. Do we want the admin person, posting the agendas and minutes and things like that? What kind of work do we want to see that? And I'd be interested in what the committee sees as most valuable for a position like that. Obviously, maintaining the website, I think, is gonna, I'd prefer that to remain in-house, so some of those items that, you know, we would continue to remain involved in, but certainly any of the others, definitely interested in hearing the committee's thoughts on what they see as the critical kind of pieces of work that they'd like to see in that position.
The city of Framingham had posted one that I saw today for a community preservation coordinator. And it was to manage all aspects of the community preservation program. But it was 25 hours a week. I'm not sure if it's an interesting job description. What are your thoughts on what you've seen or what you think we need for support? Anybody?
I think Kathy's got it.
I feel like we will grow to a point where we will really need a coordinator, because we did most of the heavy lifting over the past year with all aspects of basically what they'll be doing, but I think we're not gonna get more than 8 projects next year, and it'll just be.
Hope so.
I know, hope so, but I think that'd be a good problem to have, so I do think we need someone in this position. I don't think we need someone necessarily 25 hours a week. I prefer to have someone, you know, like we talked about, on an all-call basis with some heavy lifting around, probably leading up to town meeting. But I don't think we need someone full-time. Would just be my thoughts.
Do you think qualified candidates exist who'd be willing to work on a limited basis, but with more hours closer to things like town meeting?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a little bit telling that most communities go through a staff position. I don't think that precludes us from using a consultancy. We may be a little bit limited in the pool of people that do that kind of niche work. I think if it's a consultant services, that it's more likely that they'll be willing to take on that kind of hourly work, and having obviously larger workloads at certain times. If we did a staff position, I think, and we would be able to do this, you know, you could either work with, you know, allocating it to a part-time position that's shared with some other part-time admin staff, you know, where they do that, and portion of their hours are allocated. But we would probably want to have a more consistent workload, and so that would be something like with the agendas and the minutes, that you could fill some of that time, and then obviously they would pick up more hours during that kind of more intense months. But, you know, we certainly, our office would continue to help work with that as well, but they could take some of the more administrative duties off of our plate.
There seemed to be some interest in having people in that list that I looked at, in answering questions from the public, and helping applicants guide them through, and a lot of other little things that is pretty specific. And yeah, I don't know how this is going to work. How you could find somebody like that, because it seemed kind of complicated and detailed in a lot of the applications that I looked at. You know, not to discourage you or anything. There's got to be somebody out there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, to me, the original intent, in my perspective, was to say, well, there are times when we need a trusted consultant that normally would have called the coalition, but they're not available. And so we need somebody to call, you know, pick up the bad phone and say, hey, you know, I got a real doozy, what do I do with this? Or that time when we were talking about last week about the fire engine, but we needed a more quicker response, saying, hey, well, what do other towns do? What do you think, right? That's the time that I thought that was important to have a consultancy. Now I see it's kind of morphing into like, well, we still have an open gap of the assistant town planner. And I don't think we're trying to fill the assistant town planner or replace them with this role instead. I think just keep the course with filling the assistant town planner role to backfill where we do need the ongoing administrative support. I don't know if how's that progressing? Is that, you know, I think you said last couple of meetings ago that reposted the application. Are there any hits?
Yeah, we reposted the application. There's a few candidates that we're gonna interview in the coming weeks. But nothing as of yet on that, so.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you can't talk to the pool applicants, but it's my hope that even if they're a junior person, that they can, we've seen the great success when we worked through with Rowan McAllister, right, the prior assistant town planner. As the committee first formed and as she also came on board to work together to understand what is CPA, how does CPC work, and move forward, and over the course of a year and a half, 2 years, we really got to a point where we were really humming, you know, in terms of getting things done. And we were less and less reliant on the coalition, and we were self-sufficient, except with some specific project questions. But I'd like to see that model continue, where you get somebody on board, and hopefully they're will be with the town longer, so that we can keep institutional knowledge, and reserve this RFQ for that bat film time. And that's my perspective on that.
Oh,
I agree with Jason's approach. I really, when I read a lot of these, I read almost all of them. I think the way these things are written, they ask for an awful lot for a very small amount of time and for a lot of experience. So I don't even see that we need that on the kind of budget that, not the budget to pay for them, but the amount of money that we're raising. So I like Jason's approach. Bring somebody in on an hourly basis. There are people who will do it. There are other towns that use people that way. There's somebody in town who's working for Clinton that way on a different thing, and might actually be doing some hours for Shrewsbury that way on a contract basis. So there are people out there that are willing to do that kind of stuff. So I think we can find somebody if we need it. But I'm also not sure at this stage of the game if, even though you say 15, 20 hours a week or whatever they say, they're written like they're a full-time job. And I don't see yet that this committee is at that level of work that we would need a full-time person or anybody close to it. Just dedicated for this board. There aren't any other boards that are like that. Only the Conservation Commission, because they need the engineer. So I think grow into it. I think your approach is the best one, if we can find somebody for his office.
Yeah.
what do the rest of you think? Maybe we should be looking at it. What are our needs? I mean, I think we do need some administrative support instead of always asking Chris, can you make a copy? Can you email? Where is? But I think that's a different role from the expertise of what does the statute say about this, or is there a precedent for this sort of project? Are we looking for two different roles? Because it does, looking through the examples you gave, some are administrative assistants. They take care of minutes and the website. And then the RFQ you wrote appeared to be a very high level of, looking at site plans and cost estimates. Those seem like very different roles to me. Mm-hmm. What do you all think? Kathy?
I think every board has a liaison, and you're serving as our liaison. It's probably the liaison for a ton of boards. So I think the problem is we're short-staffed here at Town Hall, and our job is not to fill that position. That's Town Hall's position, job to do. So we need to focus on what do we need, and I think that's when crunch time, when a question comes up, to be able to call up and say, hey, do some research on this fire department project and get back to us, and our next meeting's this day. So I don't think administrative, that is the job, to make copies, as mundane as it is, but that's not the job of this committee, nor should we pay someone. No other board pays for someone to make photocopies. Just my thoughts.
Good thoughts. Anybody else want to weigh in? So do folks exist? Are there folks that you could send the RFQ to about being that important phone call, research this, check this site out, get back to us?
Yeah, so I think that would be the next step. I think I've heard in terms of scope, I hear that we're talking more like project management and project, application review support. as well as kind of on-call services. So I think that helps me kind of gear in the scope that we're looking at, and I'm happy to look at, if there's consultants, that we see that might be viable. Ultimately, I think it's, posting the RFQ and seeing a little bit who bites at that, and trying to get the 3 quotes, but yeah, we can definitely send that out.
What is this body think? Does the RFQ as written satisfy that? Is it asking for that right kind of, or are there some edits or things you'd like to see added to it?
Kathy?
I think, well, to answer that question, I think it's more than we need. But I was just thinking possible candidates could be someone who perhaps worked on the ballot committee and served on the committee for someone like Northborough that's been doing it for years, knows it really well, but is no longer, or could even be serving in that capacity for Northborough, but is a resource for us. So I think people that have worked for communities that instituted it longer ago than we did. Like Jason could do that for another community.
There you go.
Or for us.
Bit of knowledge there.
But if I had the answer, I would say.
Yeah.
But you happen to pick Northborough, and we know people that, are retired in that space, and that would be, I wonder if they would be, if they would apply. Anyways, I think, I think the comments about the job posting descriptions are wonderful, actually, to just say, this is what we want out of the assistant town planner in terms of related to what we're gonna do in the CPC. I think, I love Watertown. If you don't know already, Watertown's my favorite. And they're, in terms of the documentation, Watertown, we borrowed a lot of their documentation in their formatting. So the Watertown posting here for the Community Preservation Coordinator, I think that this section regarding primary responsibilities and tasks is great, just as a punch list to give for the assistant town planner, but what do you do in a CPC? Figuring that not, I think you're splitting them between us and a affordable housing trust. But it's just like, what do you do for CPC? Yeah, that's it. It is as comprehensive as it can be, without getting too minutia. But again, from my earlier comments, I think that just covers the assistant town planner for relative to CPC. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for the RFQ as you drafted, this was just a template, right?
So I did do some draft language in there, in terms of, trying to gear it towards, what we're looking for. But I think we needed this discussion on it to
Okay.
better kind of dial in that scope. So I would want to make some edits and come back with a revised version that we can then vote on to have it issued.
Okay.
But I think I did try to get enough in there to at least prompt some discussion, so. The dates
Well,
on
I'm
it.
asking, because I think the scope of work piece on task 2 sounds more like this was the shared use path. Is this a different RFQ?
Oh, did I put the wrong one in?
So that's why I interpret it as like, oh, this may be just a template for our discussion.
I apologize, that was,
So other parts, I see other parts of referencing CPC, but I think that section's ripe for conversation here, right? Because that's,
yeah, so the scope of work, a lot of the highlighted section, that's, the highlighted is just a reminder
Means
for me
change.
to remove it, right?
Oh, okay.
So yes, I did use the Jordan Pond as a template to then
Okay.
create this, so, yeah.
all right, so would you like feedback on that section about what to put in its place?
Yeah, certainly.
Go for
I
it.
think this
You
is,
have the floor.
this is free form, not saying this is the verbatim, I think, and we talked about this, it's providing, consulting services to review, compliance with chapter 44B and all its follow-on regulations as applicable. I mean, it's just the highest level possible. Consultants would, is primarily used as a expert in this space to help the committee understand whether a project is eligible per 44B, and any additional consultant services that need to be identified in order to proceed with the project. So I'll give it for example. Let's say we were dealing with historic, well, the project we just had, like historic side. What does it mean to have standards to the Secretary of Interior? And does it apply to Mr. Vistakar's point last meeting? Does it apply to
Real?
to chattel, right? To non-real property, right? Does it apply to fire engine? Gail, later on in the meeting, you're gonna be talking about the historic home program. Well, in that case, is there any nuances that would come up in a particular house that we have to be discussing? Like, is it town-owned? Is it, is it under some other kind of vagary that we need to explore further, but we don't have the expertise to go there, right? Or the assistant town planner doesn't have the resources to have that in-house. So I think it really is that additional consultancy.
So we're looking for a consultant who has the expertise that we lack or can't readily access. Does that sound like what we're all looking for? Alright.
There is.
So perhaps make some edits and share that again with us the next meeting?
Yep.
Seems it's close. I think Jason gave you a lot to work with.
Yeah, I think with that, I should be able to have a finalized copy for us to review and vote to issue for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think that's one that is.
Yes, Martha.
A consultant.
Given that the scope of work is taken from a different situation, the number 3 is task 3 is project tracking. Do we want to write anything or say anything about that and expecting somebody to help with that, or is that more of an administrative support?
What do you think, Chris?
I think they, we did kind of talk earlier about, project management, providing updates and things like that, as kind of assistance to some of the town departments that are kind of seeing some of these projects come in. I think that would be useful. Obviously, we're kind of filling that role, but having some assistance on that from the consultant, I think that'll help us to have, again, kind of more regular work for them to be included on and fill some of that time as well. But also, obviously, would help kind of keep us a little bit organized on that end of things too.
Do you think that project management would be something a consultant would need to do on an ongoing basis, or would the right person be someone who could help us develop a process for project management that could be fulfilled either by, the appropriate departments that are co-applicants of the projects, or even just admin staff that already exists within the department to make sure checks were cut or reports were submitted?
Yeah, I think it'd be useful having, and maybe project management is the wrong term, but I think a project monitoring, essentially just kind of working with staff as they need it. As DPW say needs someone to go to the coalition to review something like that, some detail, help them to do that back end of the work, and so I think that project monitoring would be more related, and I think we could also add in with that, develop a project management or project implementation kind of process that'll help us to, that we can then, it would be a one-time kind of a thing, but then we use that process moving forward. I think that would be useful, so.
Is that a requirement within our granting funds, like to the fire truck, right? Is there a requirement that they give us updates on their progress and what's
That is in
happening?
the contracts that they
Okay.
sign before they receive funding.
Okay.
This would help us to develop a more detailed process of tracking down those updates
Yeah.
and providing those to the committee, so.
Yeah, I'd suggest in the meantime, if folks continue to look at other examples in other communities and you see something that stands out as that maybe that aha moment of what we think we need, please forward it to Chris and share your thoughts with him while he revises it. So you've got something.
No, educate me a little bit. Some of the projects are projects that are being done by town departments, right? Not
Yes.
co-sponsoring, they're doing those. So those should be supervised by those departments, I would think. So it's the people or the entities that are private groups, nonprofits or whatever, that apply for funds and get funds. Those are the ones that you're concerned about oversight. Is that what this person would be doing?
But
I can't,
my assumption, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're suggesting is it would be as needed, that, like you're saying, something that a project that DPW is the lead on, they have their processes. We'd still like them to report to us how it's going and that, but a project monitor wouldn't be necessary for the
No.
Department of Public Works. But perhaps for the Friends of Prospect Park, they might need a little bit more assistance in moving the project along and making sure that they're adhering to all appropriate standards. Is that what you were suggesting, Chris?
yeah, because the town departments shouldn't need that.
So it wouldn't be a blanket, all projects would fall under this monitor, but as needed. That's what you're suggesting.
I think in general, it'd be good to have an update. Like, when the basketball court's done, it would be nice if Parks and Rec saying, basketball court is done, come and take a
Well,
look at it.
and they're
So I think
actually in the
there should
contracts,
be-
they're asked to give us, I can't recall if I haven't had enough coffee, top of my head, but they are asked to give us progress
Right.
reports while it's happening. Everyone
And
is.
that's all I think
Yeah.
we need. I don't know that we necessarily need to manage the process. I think we took care of that in the vetting process, that there's steps that need to happen.
Well, I think on the independent organizations, you might want somebody to go out and look and see what's going on in the field. Just check it. I think you would want that. That doesn't take much. You go out there and look and see what they're doing, find out where they are with it. Because you're gonna be releasing money against what they say they're doing, right?
Is it released based on milestones, or is it just, right, all
Well,
at once?
I'm not so sure we should just be giving money out, because they gave us an invoice and said, here, we spent this.
I agree.
But I don't anticipate that would take a lot of time.
So that's where I think, rather than getting into the details now, I think that's where, we could have them at this first run, develop that project implementation kind of monitoring program that we then reuse. And we would have to apply it, whether it's a, town department or not, but I think that, certainly that would give us more of a framework to make sure that we are hitting those milestones, and if for whatever reason someone needs some assistance in hitting those milestones, that process would give us that kind of indicator, and this person would then kind of come in and help to kind of keep that end organized in the way that we need, at least keep the documentation all in order so that we have it.
Great. Yeah. I
Yes.
think, I wouldn't say the town, like the internal departments are completely excluded though. They would say just making sure that there is a CPA, let's say it was a combined effort between Affordable Housing Trust, CPC, and Housing Authority. The monies that CPC allocates have those rules, 44B follows those monies. So it's just saying, okay, making sure that, okay, when the counts are mixed in with other municipal monies, these monies are segregated because they have certain rules that apply to them that don't apply to the AHT in part. And certainly Housing Authority is a different animal, right? So there's a different case there. If they're like, when we get to the point where there's preservation of the 1830 schoolhouse or the District 5 schoolhouse, also following up, ensuring that it's still being in compliance with Secretary of Interior rules on rehabilitation when we get to that point. So I think it's just checkpoints saying, hey, are you still following? Yes. Yes or no. I certify I'm still following it, right? And it's probably a formalized, like, sign this document, you're attesting to this. because you're on the hook, right? As opposed to, you know, eyeballing and saying, nope, that doesn't comply, that doesn't comply. Wrong color, not historic. Maybe Gail might pick that up, but, you know.
Certainly not. So I think you've got enough to work on for next time?
I do. Yeah, I think, so what I'll do is I'll make some revisions to that document for the next meeting. Obviously, in the meantime, if there's things that you see that you'd like me to include, please send those along. But we can also do a little bit of live editing at the meeting if we need to add in some final adjustments, so.
And we'll move on to the Historic Home Restoration Programs. You should have all received some information from Chris about the program that Gail wants to share with us. So Gail, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Well, as an ongoing process of identifying and protecting the historic assets of town, I wanted to bring this program, particularly Springfield's program, to your attention. I think it's a very viable program for Shrewsbury to initiate. And I wanted to get the temperature of this committee and garner some questions from you that I could have answered for another time. This is just an introduction to this, but for those of the people watching at home and others, the program consists, it was a pilot program in 2020, and now they've extended it to a second round, where homeowners that own historic properties can get CPA money to maintain, or not maintain, to restore the facades of the outsides of their home. I don't think it's much different than the grants that are given for commercial facade restoration work. So why shouldn't we be doing it for homeowners as well, to enhance the character of the town? I think it shows that the town has an interest in historic preservation, and people it's income driven. So if someone can't afford to maintain their house, you know, painting windows, railings, things like that you see from the street that would enhance and protect the home, they can apply for as for Springfield, it's up to $30,000 in CPA monies. It's a lottery system that they have. They do it in a little different than we would have to do it, because they have, it's like 17 districts, historic districts with many, many homes, and they've extended it to up to 1940. I would propose that we take our inventory list that we currently have prior to 1900 and deal with those homes in Shrewsbury that to begin with. Once we get that taken care of, if we want to extend it to when we do the next set of inventory, that's a different story. But since we have an inventory in place now with those homes, it would certainly be easy to do it town-wide rather than district-wide. It's my personal feeling that years ago that the historic district should have been enlarged to include a lot of Main Street and Grafton Street as well, and some of South Street. But, you know, we have that small pocket in the center of town, but those homes are pretty well taken care of. But there's a number of homes throughout the district, throughout the town, that could use a little rejuvenating. And, you know, homeowners that own historic homes, they generally have a passion for a historic home, but not always the resources. So I think it's to the benefit of the town to enhance the look of historic homes. When people drive through town, whether it's going down Grafton Street or Main Street or Maple Ave or South Street, Historical Commission has a plaque program that we're going to be initiating, so those homes will be identified. And it'd be nice for people. You go through other communities and you see historic homes, you know, that with plaques on them, and they look beautiful, and it's really enhances the town. So I hope you had a chance to read through this. But if you have questions, those are the questions that I would like, so I can, when I contact the Springfield CPC, I can have those questions answered for you, rather than going to them first and then coming back and going back and forth and back and forth. So I don't know how you feel, whether you're tepid, hot, cold, steaming about the project, but I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have, and hopefully I can give you a little bit more insight, but
You got
I have a question. I think it's the one I was looking at. It had to do with, it would be a, kind of a, it wouldn't have to go to town meeting for every single house. It would be oriented by a committee that would, approve the house and so
I
on.
believe that's how it is.
Yeah,
but,
that would save a lot of trouble.
uh,
I mean, just
I think,
from the
well,
point of view of
that's a
logistics.
good point. I think if I read right, that there is a special committee that reviews all applications, and it's a lottery system.
Mhm.
So once they have passed all the vetting of qualifications, they go into the pool, and then whatever, how many they're doing that year gets pulled. But I can't, this is what I want to add, that's exactly the type of question that I would like to go back to them and have clarified, so.
Mhm.
I believe it is a bylaw as well, it has to be a town bylaw to initiate it, so that process I'm not aware of. I don't know what is involved in that process.
I'm not quite sure how this fits in with CPC. I mean, it would be CPC money, right?
Right, yeah, CPA money.
Mm-hmm.
It's CPA money funding privately owned projects,
Okay.
homes, which generally is not allowable. But Jason, did you have a comment? You look like you're ready to. So this is a special program that was initiated.
It's allowable with exceptions.
Correct.
Yeah, it's allowable with exceptions that as long as it's the intent of CPA on the historic preservation side was to ensure that when it comes to privately owned, and it's a great write-up in the coalition website, so refer to that as the primary source. But my understanding in that reading is that the private home is eligible so long as CPA monies will be protected, and so that there's a clawback position. That's
Right.
one of my questions about if the homeowner turns around and sells a home,
Right.
or becomes no longer income restricted. Does that mean that
And I believe there's a
Clawback.
time limit on paying back as well.
So I think just getting the details on that is where my head's at. But yeah, it is allowable as long as A is exterior, right? So it's community facing.
Right. And some minor interior could be done, like if they had to change the windows and it required changing ropes and things inside in the window, then that would be allowable inside, according to, in the Springfields program. They've kind of tailored it, I'm sure that they've gone through all the necessary vetting to make sure that everything is in line.
Right.
But it's just a facade. If you drive by, I can think of two right off the bat, one on Main Street and one on Grafton Street, that could definitely, if something isn't done, neglect and not deliberate neglect, but just time, weather, takes its toll. So if something isn't done to these homes, then we're gonna lose them.
Kathy?
I think this program is great. I'm fully in support. My only question is how do they administer it and the lottery program and how that works.
Right.
But I think if something like this was in place 10 years ago, would have a lot more historic homes in town. So I am all on board with this.
Martha?
I was wondering about how closely it needs to be tied to the historic district.
Well, theirs is they have 17 districts, so they've determined those districts and the homes that are within those districts. So if a home comes for this program, it has to be in one of those 17 districts. Personally, I think we don't have districts in our town, but we have several clusters even of historic homes throughout the town that could be kind of considered districts if we wanted to, but our historic homes are kind of scattered throughout the whole community. So I'm proposing that it's just a town-wide program, not a historic district program.
And there's nothing within the CPA regulations that would restrict it to being in a designated historic.
I don't know, as long as it's historically designated, and that's why I say, if we have our inventory of currently about 150, we're still looking at another 75 or so, but those probably won't be eligible. So we're looking at, what, 140 potential homes, but many of those would not qualify. We would have to determine what we would deem historically necessary to repair or
So-
fix.
Being on the inventory
because they're
isn't
old
necessarily
doesn't-
sufficient. There's be more to it than that.
If it's on the Macris inventory, then it's been designated as historically significant.
How many do we have on the Macris inventory?
What's that?
How many do we have?
Well, one of the commissioners is now putting that list together. Right now, there's not many, but because it takes 18 months to get things put on Macris, so it's a slow process. So we have our inventory list. That list will be put on Macris, and there's really no, it's up to the commission to decide those homes that are, the assets that go onto the Macris list.
But they have to meet criteria.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Right. So that's what we're doing now, is putting those on Macris. But officially, they are not on Macris right at the moment. Because because Macris requires it to be done in a certain format, which is ridiculous, but it's the way they want it. And then it takes, we were told it takes 18 months to actually have it on the Macris.
So if
That's a long time.
if a historic house
Yep.
needs structural work,
Structural work?
is it covered?
Well, it depends on the structural work. If it's a
Interior
porch,
Interior structural work,
No?
no.
okay. So it's
This
not.
is more
it-
cosmetic.
Okay. It's not gonna help us save a house that needs major repairs to be able to
Well,
prolong its life.
We were-
Outside it could. Right? It's
well,
all
outside,
exterior.
yes, or it helps the homeowner, it alleviates that much, it frees up that much more money to put into the home.
Right, but the
in
money
another
can
way.
only be used for exterior.
Correct.
Can't be used for interior structural.
Correct, to my understanding, and I mean, we can fashion it any way we want, but I would agree with, I don't think it should be done necessarily for foundation work. I think it's more what's seen from the right of way, just like any historic district. You know, you don't make changes on anything that's seen from the road, so. If a porch is in disrepair, it needs to be fixed. If the windows need changing to make them more energy efficient, all that kind of stuff.
Would there be a mechanism in place to ensure that, that the cosmetic exterior improvements were only made to a home that is structurally sound? Because it would be dreadful to invest that in making it
Absolutely.
beautiful in the front, but the back is falling down around it or the roof is caving in.
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a
Right.
great question back to them. How do they make that determination?
Or who makes that determination?
Right.
And
And
again, all
who pays
these,
for that determination? You have a
Yes, who
structural
pays for
engineer,
the
and
determination?
whose dime is that?
it would have to be the homeowners, I think, to prove that it's structurally sound. They have to get, Springfield requires, what, three quotes, I believe, from contractors. They put up the upfront money, deposit.
So, follow-up question, about Macris.
Mm-hmm.
To get on Macris, does that mean that the commission has deemed the home as a local historic asset?
Yes.
Okay, so you're on Macris, you're there, checkbox.
And districts can be on Macris as well, like whole streets. If it's there's one now, I think it's the Old Mill area that's on there. It was on there years ago. It's probably changed. It's even difficult to get something off of Macris.
Okay.
But that's the guide that we have at the time. right now, so we have to go by. It doesn't have to be on the historic registry. It's on the Massachusetts registry, basically, is what's MACRIS.
And
Sorry, just to clarify.
National Historic Registry, it does not
All
have.
right, so the property needs to be on one of three: national, Massachusetts, or local. So if the committee,
Yes,
if the committee
I'm-
meets and says so-and-so's house is historic, or is a home of significant historic asset in our community, then it's so. It's one of the three, gotta be on one of those three lists. So it's not about being in a district specifically, it's not about being, cause it's Jane's house and we love Jane, right? It's about being on one of those three lists.
I have a question. If you're going to talk to the people in Springfield, I would be very interested to know how their evaluating committee that actually works with these houses relates to their CPC. Is it the same people, or is it a subcommittee, or is it somebody totally different that the CPC, picks or reviews, or
Right.
where do they get those people to do that?
I think that's where, my guess, total guess, is that's where the bylaw comes in, to create the committee and their
I think so.
charge. But would we have to follow the same model on that?
We don't have to, are we gonna, do we have to follow the same model, is that
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
No, this is just an idea.
Yeah.
I think it works well in Springfield. It may not work this way here, but they seem to have it, pretty well down, so I don't see why we couldn't follow theirs. They have all the income levels, how many people in the house, they base on that. So, I mean, it's all done. All the work is done for us, but certainly we tweak it, so that's what I wanted to know from you. What would you want to know before we pursue this more, or do we not want to even bother with it?
Did you say there's information on this on the coalition site?
Yes, on,
Yeah, it's
specifically
all on it.
about funding private homes for historic preservation.
Right.
Oh, not for this program.
The program,
The
I think there's a call out, I think there's probably an article about
It's
the
called
program.
Springfield Historic Homes Restoration Program.
But they put that together.
Yes.
Okay.
You say that
You mean
Springfield.
Springfield? Yes, it's a program, Springfield. It was a pilot program in 2020 and expanded their scope to the efforts in a second cycle. This unique program allows owners of homes located across seven specific historic districts in the city to apply for CPA grants of up to $30,000 in order to complete exterior restoration or rehabilitation projects. Cambridge also has one, but it's a little bit more, I think Springfield's is more in tune with what we would want.
Cambridge a little more involved?
Pardon me?
Cambridge a little more involved?
Well, it's affordable housing and nonprofits and things like that more.
Question.
Yes.
Something else that I'd like to ask through you is, how do they make a determination of this
yeah.
is maintenance versus to the level of capital improvement that's necessary? Because CPA monies can't fund maintenance. Like,
That's
my
right.
house needs painting. Well, that's not
Right.
eligible. However, your house is such a disrepair that we will lose this asset in our community if it's not fixed now.
And it's a one-time thing. You can't come back and ask for it to be painted again. It's like, CPA isn't
Maintenance.
a funding for you to paint your house every 5 years, just because it's historic.
I thought I read that if you had painted your house purple in the 70s, you could get this money to paint it historic yellow now.
Yes.
Did you see
Oh,
that?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
So
It
if
has
you,
to-
so yeah, you could have painted it, 5 years ago, but that's restoration, not a regular paint job.
Right. And
So
it
if you
it
had
does
wood
have-
taste in the 70s.
70s, we can fix it for you.
Because you have to go
that
by
era.
standards of, Secretary of Interior, so they're not gonna let you paint a historic home purple
Right, right.
or
But-
pink or green.
let's say you had aluminum siding added to your 1700s house. And so in order to restore it back to its original historic asset, you would remove all that.
Correct.
And then fix up, right?
Now,
Think you're gonna do that with $30,000?
If, I was just gonna say, if you could do that for $30,000, yeah.
Is it just the
But-
front you would do?
Yeah, right.
Just that part you see standing directly in
Right.
front. Are there more questions or things we'd like Gail to explore further?
Sounds interesting.
It does.
It does. That's, well, okay, so I'll contact Springfield and get more in-depth information other than what they have on the coalition, and then report back, and then we can go from there. I'm sure there'll be more questions, and
That would be terrific. And if there's a field trip to Springfield, I know people don't say this often, but I'm always up for a field trip to Springfield.
So, just before we move on, and it's not related to the Springfield one, but, just, I did drop in the certified local government page on that. I don't
Yeah.
know if there's opportunities, that's another funding mechanism, and I know we'd have to do some more to get to that status, but, I think there might be some ability to dovetail there. So that's something I'd like to, explore with, the Historic Commission as well, and see, Historic District Commission, and see what we can do.
Yeah.
That's that
If
first
there's interest
document.
there. But, yeah, I think the second one, certified local government, but, it's essentially, it's a funding, mechanism through, federal funding, but it then goes, it kind of trickles down to the state, and there's a certain amount of funding that they have to put out to communities. It is somewhat competitive, but I think, I think they may be looking to pursue some smaller communities. A lot of them, current certified local governments are, Boston and Boston proper. They don't have as many smaller communities, so I think there's interest in trying to find and involve some of those communities. So, I don't know if we're gonna go that route, but it's something I'd like to
Well,
explore,
sure.
so.
great.
That's one last question. Is 30,000 a statutory limit?
I don't know that. I can ask.
I think it's.
I don't know if that was an arbitrary number that they came up with.
What?
I believe the 30,000 and the 3 quotes is probably related to the procurement law. That otherwise you need to do full kind of RFPs, but you can do 3 quotes and,
What, verbal quotes?
Oh.
We can look it up. If there's a house that's worth doing, it's gonna cost a lot more than that. Be nice to know.
Well, remember, this is an assistance program, more probably. I mean, I don't know how much you can get done in 30,000, although if it's
No,
just,
Not a lot.
it can be up to 30,000. So if it's just a porch railing or a porch that needs redoing, they can apply for whatever it is and up to 30,000.
I was just thinking bigger.
Guess we'll find out. Are there any other questions for Gail? Anything else you'd like her to investigate around that? All right, then the next item is potential website updates.
Yeah, so this was kind of a quick one. I wanted to throw that on there. Some of the discussion, I pieced a couple discussion items together after our meeting, and I was kind of just thinking and went back to our website. But Jason, you had mentioned with the fire truck apparatus, looking at some of the other websites, and you weren't able to find like a page that said this is the project. And I had the same challenge, of like, what are other communities doing? Can I see like their application materials? And I know, planning board, that's kind of our regular process, that we create the project page, and it has all of the meeting materials, all of the supplemental materials, the application. So I don't think it'd be relatively a heavy lift to do that. But I kind of wanted to throw that out there to the committee. I think that'd be a great way to get kind of real-time updates that we could work with, as projects progress. We can host the updates there, whether it's photos or reports, just so that people can kind of look at that in their own time. I think it'd be useful to present it to the committee still, but just in the meantime, people can kind of follow along with their favorite projects, or if other communities are looking at what we're doing, just to showcase the work that we're doing. I think it'd be great. I know we do have a lot of that material that's kind of already there, but I think just kind of refreshing it and taking that website just a little bit further. So that's my initial idea. I don't necessarily need the answers tonight, but I would like to, similarly, if you guys can go to other communities' websites and say, hey, Watertown is doing this on their website, and we really could kind of maybe do something like that, and give us some direction on things you'd like to see on the website. I think this would be a good time to kind of refresh that process and see where we can go a little bit further on the website.
It's a great idea. That also leads to transparency for the communities. They know where the money's going and how it's being used.
Yep.
We need to tell them often and in many different formats.
Yep. I want to see what the other communities are doing well, and then I want to do it better. So that's.
I like that attitude. Does anyone have any examples they've seen already they'd like to share with Chris, or any questions for him or suggestions for the website? You've got one.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
talking
no,
about the test.
yeah, certainly. I don't have them off the top of my head right now, but I remember going through this. Like I had a draft list going, so I'll certainly send that over.
Perfect.
But I think my favorite communities were the ones that were they gave more information to your earlier points. And I think also it's marketing too. I think it'd be helpful for us to push out, hey, this is an update. And I'd like to see us have, I know this is kind of blending outside the project page, but leveraging more of our was it, now it's X instead of Twitter, right? But just really getting out there, say, hey, this is what this project's doing. Excitement, especially when it comes to, the playground changes and, preserving. The coalition does a great job of highlighting communities when they're great success stories. It furthers adoption of CPA, and then for us in Shrewsbury, it would help us gin up support for other projects. So I think that would be a great idea to not only have it as static information coming up that gets added to the page, but also as an active social piece that's added through Twitter.
That actually segues perfectly into, Carl, go ahead.
Would we also want to put on there upcoming projects? I'm just thinking of town meeting members who are going to vote on these projects for fundings. And what do they know about them, other than a blurb inside the warrant? Right, and I just think of, I don't know, just getting them more involved or giving them more information to say yes, or unfortunately no.
Yeah, the fire truck thing, I mean, this is coming up very soon, and nobody's heard about it yet.
Right.
I was gonna go to two of my neighbors who are town meeting members and tell them,
I
just
believe
to make sure at least two
the
know.
fire trucks case, probably there's a memo that'll be prepared for the town meeting packet. And the project applicant gave us a lot of terrific information that you can use to include in that memo. In this case, you don't have to recreate the wheel, because a lot of it's there.
But one of the other websites I've seen do have a, like what's in the pipeline, right? So what's been approved, what's in motion right now for approval through CPC, what has been deferred, right? Just all the statuses that a project could have.
Once our pipeline gets a little fuller, that would be exciting stuff to share. That was actually the next point that I wanted to make, that when we have the fire truck coming up, we should be talking and reminding people that it's not too soon. Like, now is actually the preferable time to start to take some of the things we heard about in the workshop, which were some tremendous ideas, and start to turn those into the eligibility application and full applications. Because how it's October, I have no idea, but May is only 7 months away. And in order to properly vet those applications, in order for us to be able to assist people and really come up with a quality application, now is the time. So if there's something we could even share in social media that we could all personally share, or in groups that we might belong to, it's definitely not too early to be talking about spring. I just figured out where Thanksgiving is, but it's not too early to talk about those projects for spring. So with next steps, speaking of the fire truck project, there are 2 meetings coming up, as part of the process. And we have approved the project that we recommend, that project for funding, but now it needs to go before the Finance Committee on October 5th. That's this week. I cannot be there. I believe Jason's out of the country. Gail, is there any chance you might be able to be there since you know so much about that project in case there are any questions from Finance Committee?
Sure.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. It's at 7 p.m. on October 5th. And then on October 10th, the Select Board will vote
October
on.
5th?
Pardon, October 5th is the Finance Committee.
This
This
Thursday?
Yes.
I can't, I have a conflict.
How is it the first week of October?
I don't know.
I'm still working
I
on my money
know.
back
I'm
guarantee
so
for the month of
sorry.
September. It did not meet my expectations. And Chris, you have a conflict that evening as well. Is there anyone that is in the state, the country, the area code on the 5th that might be willing to be there? Or is it appropriate to ask Finance Committee if they have any questions we could answer in advance?
I can go, but I don't know how much help I'm gonna be.
Well, you've seen the presentation, so you're equivalent of all of us.
No, if they're asking technical questions of us about funding, I might struggle a little. I'll go. I
Yeah,
can
but in terms of the technical questions, we'll have, I believe, fire and certainly the town
Oh,
manager
yeah.
will be there as well to,
I can go.
they're familiar with
That would be
those.
great. Thank you.
You can communicate the general support of the committee for the
Yeah.
project.
Okay.
That would be wonderful. So what else do we have for next steps? We've got some,
Who is going to the Select Board?
Yes.
Select Board, yes, that's the 10th, and I guess what state I'll be in on the 10th. That is next Tuesday. I don't know if I'm back.
I am available for that.
Okay, that would be terrific. Thank you, Chris. We have those covered. What else do we have for next steps this week? Yes, Kat.
Is there a pre-town meeting or just Select Board and Finance for this one?
It's usually not a pre-town meeting,
fall?
but specials.
Okay.
Those are the pre-town meetings.
Again.
I have something, someone sent me a message that they, in a picture that they saw in Salem. And it's a sign that says Salem CPA at Work. And it says, "This project receives funding assistance from the citizens of Salem through the Community Preservation Act." And it's a large,
that.
large sign. So we talked about signage on our project.
If some of our projects are getting going, it may be time to look into getting some signs. Maybe you could share that with us, because
I
that would
will.
be, I would love to be, and that then can go on the website with a nice picture, and even if it's a pile of dirt, but it's CPA at Work.
Mhm.
That will go a long way to helping and hopefully spurring more ideas. I can't see everybody.
And there's one on 140,
Oh,
the
is there?
Camp Wunigan parking lot.
Yeah,
That would be
Oh,
that would
very
be
visible.
fantastic.
yeah.
How fast can we get these
Very
signs?
visible.
That is right now a very muddy site.
Everything's muddy.
Yeah, it's been so wet lately.
I know. Walked out to pick the last of my tomatoes, and it was, ugh.
Hold on a
You had
second,
a
I'm
question
looking
about
for something.
timing?
I'm sorry,
You had a
what?
question about timing?
I had a question about time.
Yeah. So how fast can we make the signs?
Oh, yes, how fast can we make the signs? Thank you for understanding what I meant.
I'd have to review that to see what we could do, but I'm happy to take a look at that and have an update.
If there's a town vendor, if we have to put that out to bid, I mean, I certainly know sources for getting things like those made.
Okay.
What else have we got, folks? So we will, at our next meeting, we'll go further with our RFQ for CPC consultant. We'll talk more about the historic home restoration program. We will be talking about whatever happens at town meeting on October 16th. And we will have some more information about projects upcoming. But if no one has anything else, but always if there's something you think of or you see you'd like to add to the agenda, let me know, let Chris know. But otherwise, yes.
Project status, I think.
Yes, project status.
Just have it, yeah.
We did talk about that at our last meeting, to see if we could get a brief report for everyone for our next meeting. All
November
right.
6th.
Sixth?
November 6th.
And then our next meeting is November. Oh. Why is it not here? Should be November 6th. For some reason, it's not on my calendar. Chris, can you double check what's the date of our next meeting?
No, November 6th at
It
7
is
p.m.
November
I
6th,
have
okay.
the meeting scheduled, it's the 6th.
I know it's one of these pieces of paper. Yes, Carl?
I cannot make the 6th. I'll be in
Thank you for
Singapore.
letting us know.
So I will not,
We'll send you, we'll have the meeting materials in advance, and if you've got any thoughts, let us know. We're happy to share your comments, even if you can't be here.
And I won't be here either, so that's 2. I don't know how many, I'll be in Germany.
I'm scheduled to be in Munson,
You have fun?
Munson,
Munson, Mass.
Munson, Mass. Not Germany, nor Singapore, sorry.
All right, how many can we be absent to still have a quorum, or
We have the majority of those
We need 5 people, I believe, isn't it?
5 people?
Hi.
5, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably got nine.
Mm.
If John can join us and Gail, we're okay. Let's keep in touch. We'll check in with John, make sure he can be here. Gail, you believe you can be. Otherwise, we can meet, but we can't vote. All right. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Let's go home. Thank you, everyone.
All right.